There are really only a few steps to preparing for the Think Time strategy: teaching your students how it will work, informing parents, choosing your cooperating teachers, and physically preparing the classrooms. After we go through the intervention, you'll see just how easy it will be to teach your students the rules of the road. Clarity is everything, and making sure your students know how the Think Time strategy works is critical. Keeping parents informed is also important. We've found that a letter home, followed by an informational meeting after the strategy has been in place for a while, is usually all that's required. Most parents are pleased to see educators taking a proactive approach to gaining order in the classroom. The strategy does require teamwork between 2 or more teachers, so you need to identify your cooperating teachers. And finally, you need to get the Think Time area ready in the classrooms. Often this is a spot in the back with a couple of different desks. There should be no posters, books, or distractions of any kind. It's to be a blank area where students can calm down and think. Step 1. Catch disruptive behavior early, before it becomes a big deal. For years, we've been taught to ignore the small stuff and not give in to those attention-seeking students. We all know what happens. Disruptive behavior escalates, power struggles and problems ensue. Catching disruptive behavior early, eliminating repeated warnings and ultimatums that do not work, is the critical first step in Think Time. It's much easier to deal with a little problem than a big one. Everyone is calmer: the student, the teacher, the class. When a student acts out, the teacher just asks the student to behave. If the student responds to the teacher's request, fine. If not, the student is simply and unemotionally directed to the designated classroom for Think Time. Some teachers use a hand signal. Others just put a pass on the student's desk or give them the number of the Think Time cooperating classroom. Step 2. Student moves to the Think Time classroom. Students almost always go to the Think Time classroom without any problem. Remember, nobody is very upset. We've caught the disruptive behavior early, and the student is simply going off to think about his or her behavior. Once there, the student waits at the door until the cooperating teacher directs the student to the Think Time desk. This is a blank, non-distracting area where the student is clearly not a part of the ongoing class. Step 3. Think Time and the debriefing process. When the teacher sees that the student is calm and has had a little quiet time, the teacher approaches the student and starts the debriefing process. This is done at the teacher's convenience because our goal is always to maintain academic instruction. Usually the student has about 5 or 10 minutes to think about their behavior and gain some self-control. Some students will take more time than others. The amount of time is not the key. The behavior is. Before giving the student a debriefing form, the teacher asks the student to describe the behavior that led him to Think Time. If the student knows, then the teacher gives him the form and he fills it out. If the student isn't ready, the teacher just matter-of-factly says, "I'll be back with you," continues the class, waits until the next convenient break, and asks again. The form is very simple. These are the questions. What was your behavior? What do you need to do differently when you go back to class? And can you do it? Younger students use a short graphic version of the form. Step 4. Check the debriefing. At the teacher's convenience, and when the student looks ready, the teacher checks the form. If it's filled out correctly, with a behavior problem and replacement identified, and no angry scribbles, then the student is directed back to the original classroom. If not, the student stays in the Think Time area, and the teacher simply says, "I'll be back with you," and resumes the class. At the next convenient break, the teacher repeats the debriefing process, asking the student to describe the behavior and fill out a new form. When it is filled out correctly, the student is sent back to the original class. Step 5. Student returns to original classroom. With form in hand, the student waits at the door for the teacher to examine the written results of his Think Time. If the form is accurate, it's really important that the teacher warmly welcomes the student back into class and helps him get re-engaged in learning. If the form is wrong and the student doesn't understand what was inappropriate about the behavior, then it's back to the think time area for another try.